I'm Victoria Pearson, but you can call me V, and literally every time I do a cooking video on this channel, I tell you I'm never doing a cooking video again. It is chaotic, it is messy, I struggle with the camera angles, but today of course I am doing another chaos cooking video. Let's go. Today, on the day that I'm filming, it is Valentine's Day. Me and my husband don't really do Valentine's Day particularly because it was my birthday last week and then our wedding anniversary is coming up in like 2 weeks' time. So we don't really bother very much with Valentine's Day, but I want to do a little something for him. Unfortunately, I have spent the week in my house trapped because our household is full of poorliness. Everyone's feeling a little bit better today. Which is great because hopefully we'll all be better in time for the weekend, but it means I haven't had a chance to get to the shops or do anything really. My husband really likes apple pie though, so I think I'm going to try and cook him a little apple pie as a surprise for when he gets home. Commence the chaos. Of course, this wouldn't be a chaos cooking video if everything didn't immediately go wrong as soon as I start. So, having torn my entire kitchen and some of my children's bedrooms apart, I still cannot find my pie dish. And so, we're improvising. I am going to use a cake tin to cook my pie in. I don't see that it can go that much differently to using a pie tin of a similar size, surely. In this household, it could have been used as an art palette, it could have been used to clean someone's bike, it could have been used for some kind of musical instrument, who knows? I do not know where the pie tin is and I've got 3 hours to get this done, get myself looking presentable before my husband gets home. So we are just going to use a cake tin. I've got a really shallow cake tin, it's got a removable base, that might make it easier to take it out, who knows? But first, of course, I have to peel all my apples. I'm going to get these apples peeled and chopped. And take the cores out because I don't like to have the skin on in this type of apple pie. You can, and if you're making apple pie roses, which I think I've shown you how to do before, then you can just leave the skin on, but you want red apples so it looks like a rose, not a cabbage. My husband doesn't love the apple pie roses, and to be honest, I don't love making them because they take ages. You have to be really precise. And if there's one thing that we know about me, it's that I'm not precise. I prefer a cooking project where I don't have to put a lot of effort into the presentation. My husband will be really happy with this without it being apple pie roses. The apple pie roses, he thinks there's not enough pastry on them. So I'm going to grab a pan so I can put my chopped up apples straight into the pan. This pan is a little bit old and battered, but that is because I've had it since I got it as a wedding present actually, and I have been married for 100 million years now, and so we've had it for quite some time. 100 million years, I say, about 18 years, I think it is. So we're going to chop these into little chunky bits, just sort of that sort of size so they cook down quicker and easier. And I have got 5 apples, so I think I'm going to use all of my apples. If you wanted to, you could add other fruit in here, it doesn't really matter what it is. Rhubarb, you can put in there, pears, anything that's sort of in season and that you fancy, I suppose. But we're doing just plain apple because my husband prefers plain just apple. If you're a real psychopath, you could put raisins in it, or whatever you fancy really, it's your palate. But for my husband, he just prefers the plain apple, so I'm making this specifically for him, and so we'll do it the way that he likes it. These things are lethal. I've literally just nearly chopped my fingernail off doing it, and if I didn't have the long nails I would have probably chopped my tip of my finger off with it, and that is why I stopped filming whilst I was peeling the apples, because talking and handling sharp objects at the same time, not my strongest suit. You can use cooking apples as well, but I'm just using, I think these are Granny Delicious, something like that. Just some eating apple. If you're using cooking apples, you will want to put a bit more sugar in it when we get to that stage than if you're using eating apples, because eating apples naturally have more sugar in, and the cooking apples are a little bit more tart. So you will just need a tiny bit more sugar if you're using cooking apples instead. That's all of our apples peeled and rough chopped into the pan. I'm going to clean this up and then I'll show you what to do next. We've got the apples in our little pan here, and we are going to add some spices and stuff to that. So I have got cinnamon. I was going to add some nutmeg into it, but I haven't got any. You can put nutmeg in it. I also picked up cinnamon sticks because at first I couldn't find the cinnamon either. How much of this do you need? I don't know. Some. I like to cover my apples in it completely. I like a cinnamony one. If you don't particularly, don't do it like that. Just add a little bit on. I'm going to stick a clove or two in here as well because I just feel like that would be nice. Again, it's entirely optional. The thing is with the flavourings is that it's entirely on your palate and how you like. I'm going to put 3 of them in there. And how you like it to be. So if you don't like cloves, don't add cloves. If you don't like cinnamon, don't add cinnamon. This is really, really simple. You cannot go wrong. All you actually need in here is a tiny drop of water and some sugar. I'm going to get a glass to put some water in and add a tiny, tiny little bit in there, just enough so that it doesn't burn. And then I'm going to pour in some sugar. Literally tiny, tiny bit of water. Probably don't even need that much. It's just enough to stop it from all sticking. And then you're going to add some sugar. How much sugar? I don't know. Why are you asking me? It's not like I'm teaching you how to do this, is it? I just pour some. Now, my husband's got a really sweet tooth, so I'm going to put a lot of sugar in. You don't have to do that. If you prefer a sort of tart, crisp, appley flavour, just put a little bit of sugar in. Don't go too overboard with your sugar though, because then it's going to become apple jam, and that's not really what we're going for. Although we do want it to go kind of jammy. Apple's very full of pectin, so it'll go jammy very, very easily. So I'm just going to put sort of a lightish layer on top of my apple, and then in a little while I'll taste it, and if I think it's still too tart I'll add some more. You really can't go wrong with it. Start off small and then just build up as you go along. Let me show you what that looks like now. So I'm going to pop that on the heat. Oh, it's starting to heat up. I thought it had just gone then. We're going to leave that to jam down for a minute and sort out our pastry. So I've cleared the counter out. My apples are jamming down now, getting their groove on. I need to make the pastry, except I'm rubbish at making pastry. I attempt it every now and then. I realise that I'm really, really bad at making pastry, and then I go and buy myself some ready roll, and that's what I'm doing today. Do not grass me up to my grandma, okay? Except that it was her that said to me, you are either good at cooking sponge cakes or you're good at cooking pastry. You can't do both, they're different skill sets. And I can cook a sponge cake without even using a set of scales. I can just eyeball it up and blah, blah, there you go, Victoria sponge. Pastry, whenever I try, it comes out lumpy. How? I don't understand. It's claggy, it's too dense, it doesn't work. So I just get some ready rolled puff pastry. I was going to say it's just rolled, but this isn't. This is some generic Tesco's or Co-op or something. Which are you? Tesco's or Co-op? You're Co-op. So generic Co-op pastry, and I like getting the sheets as well, because then you don't even have to do any rolling if you don't want to. It's fantastic. I am going to do a bit of rolling, but that's more for our decorative stuff. But before we get started on this pastry, we do have to grease the tin. So I'm going to grab some margarine. Ugh. Don't worry, my hands are clean, but it's just because it's under my nails now. Ugh. And we're going to rub that on there. I'm going to make sure that we cover the whole thing, including the sides, so that none of the pastry sticks, because I don't really want to have to serve the pie in the tin. We're going to have a nice pie base as well. And I'm going to show you how to do that without your bottom going soggy and your top getting burned. But step 1 is grease this tin, and make sure that you remember to do the sides of the tin as well, because you don't want to go to lift it out and then all your pretty crust just vanishes. That would be awful. So making sure we're doing all along the sides of this as well as the bottom part. Just rubbing it in like we're giving it a little massage. I don't know if you can hear that noise at the moment, but that is the apples starting to bubble and boil. I'm going to put some greaseproof paper on it, and then I'm going to grease on top of that as well. I could trim off the excess, but I'm not going to bother with that either. Now we're going to grease on top of that, and this one I'm going to be even more greasing, just to make extra sure that it's not going to stick to the paper. It's greaseproof paper, so it shouldn't, but you know, this is me, it's chaotic, it always happens to me, so anything that can go wrong when I'm cooking will go wrong. It's one of the natural laws of the universe, and so we try and prevent that at every stage. So here is my greased up tin, which is technically a cake tin, but we're going to pretend it's a pie tin today. One thing we do want to do every now and then is go and give our apples a little stir so they don't stick or burn to the bottom. So I'm going to quickly do that. I don't think I need to show you that, because you know how to stir a pan, right? You can hear them bubbling and boiling, but they're still very solid at the moment. I'm going to get some flour to put down on this counter to stop my pastry sticking when I roll it out. If you don't have flour, and that's why you've bought ready-made pastry today, these rolls do come with a sort of greaseproof paper liner, so it won't stick to your counter. And if you're just using it as it is, then you don't need to bother flouring the surface. Because you won't be using your rolling pin at all, it's got nothing to stick to. I'm going to roll it out a bit so that I've got some extra, because I want to do something decorative on top. But if you don't have flour and you want to do that as well, cooking oil will work. Just rub a little bit of cooking oil on your counter, not a flavoured one, because your pastry will pick up the flavour of it, and that will stop it sticking. And you can also oil up your rolling pin to do that as well. Anybody else have in their baking cupboard just like a million half-used bags of flour and you don't know which one is the right one anymore? That's where I'm at now. Thanks to the Christmas baking, I've got half a bag of every kind of flour that you could possibly imagine in there, but we won't worry about that right now. So, first thing we're going to do is make our pie base. And so that's the layer of pastry along the bottom. You can technically just put your fruit in the dish and put pastry on top, but I would argue that that is not a pie, that is a stew with a lid. Let me see how much space that actually, oh no, I'm going to do about half of this. So as you might have seen there, I took my thing and I put it on top of the pastry and I made sure I cut a piece that was bigger than the base. So this part's going to be my top, and I know you're thinking that's not big enough, we can roll that out more, it's fine, but I'm actually not going to do a full top on top of it, I'm going to do something decorative. But we do need the full bottom. So, as you can see, I didn't even need to roll this out or anything, it's already a nice thin sheet that's just about the right size. So we're going to tuck that in to our pie dish, or in my case cake tin, and just gently push it, I don't know if you can see, just gently going to push that down into the dish so that it's sitting fully in there, like so. And then we're going to go around and cut the excess off. And you don't want to cut down too low because you want something for your lid to stick to. So allow it to go just outside the edge of your pie tin. This will make more sense when I show you what I'm talking about. You see how I'm cutting it slightly bigger than the cake tin, so it's over the rim. That will give us something for our lid to stick to then. So I'm not taking all of the excess off, just the big flappy bits. And you can keep all of this pastry that you're cutting off aside and roll it up together with what's left and make your pastry lid out of it as well. So you don't have to waste this. You can just roll it up with the rest and reuse it. You can even roll it up and stick it in the freezer and it'll keep fine in there. And just defrost it before you use it and it'll be grand. Now, I'm not going to do anything major decorative right now because that's mostly for the top. But what I am going to do is crimp the sides. So I'm making my edges a little bit neater. I'm folding up the edges just so they're not too raggedy. And then I'm going to take a fork and do a little crimping along the edge. Now, this is partially because that's pretty and decorative, but it's also so that when I put my lid on, it's got something to stick to. So all I'm doing is just taking the fork and pressing it into the rim, just to make this little mark here. And it's a bit like when you're working with clay. Like, if it's too smooth of a surface, the lid isn't going to stick to it. And we don't want that. But for me as well, I'm not sure I'm going to do a full lid or not yet, because I want to do some little cute hearts on it because it's Valentine's pie. And so, these might not be particularly visible. Now, I said to you before that what we really don't want is a soggy bottom and a burnt top. And this is how you prevent that. So, now that I have got my base, I'm going to get my trusty greaseproof paper again. I think in America you might call this baking parchment, I'm not sure. But it's sort of like toilet paper that you get in schools, you know, it's shiny, nothing can stick to it. And I'm going to take a piece of that is bigger than my pie base, and I'm going to gently lay that on top, like so. And then we're going to fill the inside of this with something to weight it down. If you do a lot of baking, you may have baking beads that you can use for that instead. I do not do a lot of baking, or not enough to justify using baking beads. So I'm going to use raw rice, which is why we have The grease proof there is to stop the rice sticking to the pastry. And I'm just going to fill my pie base with this rice. And what that's going to do is allow my pastry to cook on the bottom without rising. So I've got room for the filling to go in it. It's going to weight it down so that it doesn't rise, it keeps its shape. And then I'll be able to put the filling in there and then do the stuff on top. So let's get this in the oven, probably for about 20 minutes or so. I will probably put it on between 180 and 200 because I'm just not following a recipe. We're just going to go for it. And so we'll keep a bit of an eye on it, make sure it doesn't burn. But we're just going to, it's called blind bake. We're going to blind bake the bottom of this pie so that when we put the filling in and we put the pastry on top, that can cook evenly without the bottom going all soggy and not being cooked yet. So it's sort of partially cooked and ready for the rest of the filling. I'm going to stick this in the oven and check on my apples. While we are waiting for that to cook, partially at least, I'm going to give this a little stir. The apples are still feeling quite firm, but they're starting to mush down a little bit now. You could probably speed this up a little bit with a potato masher, but I think that the flavour comes out better if you let it cook nice and slow. If you need to speed things up and you don't want to use a potato masher, cut your piece of apple down to smaller pieces and they will cook much, much quicker and become a nice little mush. So if we have a look here, you can see we haven't got lots and lots of liquid on there. I'm hoping I can show you before my camera steams up too bad. We haven't got lots and lots of liquid, it's just enough to sort of stew it. It's starting to feel a little bit softer when I cook it now. And we're getting there a little bit. Don't mind how messy my cooker is. I think we will leave this to cook down a little bit longer. And we'll get on with designing the lid for the pie because I want to get a little bit creative with this one. Like I said, this is a Valentine's pie, so I'm thinking it might be nice to do sort of like a heart on top instead. That was my thinking anyway, so I was using this as a sort of guideline so I don't make the heart too big. I'm just going to chop off my excess for a minute. And I've got enough excess left now that I might actually make like a little jam roly-poly for my kid or something, but we'll see. Maybe I should do a half and half one and like unfold it after. Let's try that. So I'm going to put this halfway down so it doesn't stick to itself. Fold that over. This could work. So it's like I'm making a paper heart. I'm pressing quite hard so that it will, hopefully the design will come through on the other side. I didn't mean to completely cut that off. So hopefully when I unfold this now, yes, it has the markings so that I can cut it out and make it a really even heart. That worked so well for something that I just decided as I was doing it. Very pleased with that. I think it'll be a bit boring if it's just got that on though, so I'm thinking we could maybe do a love you on it perhaps. Let's see if we can make that work. So we'll put that heart aside for a moment because that's perfect and you can use it just as it is. Actually, whilst I'm in the middle of this, I'm going to go and check on the pastry base. You know when you open the oven and the heat just gets right into your eyes and makes you look like you're crying? That's me now. Yay. My pie base is not quite ready yet. My apples were starting to burn a little bit, so I've added a little bit more water into there and we'll just see how that goes. And I need to remember to stir it a bit more often than I am here. However, I've added a little bit more water to it. If you want to, you can add apple juice or orange juice instead. If I was being super fancy, I could print out a template to make my letters if I was super fancy, but I'm not. So I'm just going to do my best. Trying to make my letters the same sort of size and also not too thick, because no one wants a big thick crusty bit of pastry on it, do they? Or maybe they do, I don't know. Hey, if this doesn't fit I could just put it in here and make it look like it was meant to be like this all along. That could work. I am not a very neat person but I'm trying. It's the effort that matters. And I tell you what, if you spend the whole of your Friday making an apple pie as somebody for a surprise and they complain about it, you are allowed to choke them with it. It's the law. It's almost an O, right? Make sure the hole in there is big enough so that when the pastry swells up, it's not going to close it. I think it might still. You can place it on, don't push it down too hard, because we're going to stick this on with some like egg or milk or something. Or if you're vegan, like jam maybe. Apricot jam works really well with apple if you don't have apple jam. Is it very neat? No, it is not, but it's the thought that counts. Let's have a look at these apples and check on the base. So our apples are now all caramelized. The brown is mostly from the cinnamon. I've tasted it, it doesn't taste burnt. I put extra sugar in here twice because, like I said, my husband does like it very, very sweet. Just add it to taste. This is the point where you taste it and you go, oh, that's not sweet enough, and put more sugar in. Or you go, oh, I've made it too sweet, and then I can't help you, I'm sorry. Maybe add more apple, I don't know. Now, unfortunately, some of my sugar has burnt to the bottom of my pan, so I'm going to have fun removing that. But now you know it's ready when your apples, I don't know if you can see, you know it's ready when your apples can be smushed with your wooden spoon. You can leave some lumps in there now if you want, or you can chop it up even smaller. It is entirely up to you. It depends what mouthfeel you're looking for. My husband doesn't like big lumps, so I'm going to chop some of them down for him. Let's check on the base, see if that's about cooked. You will know if you touch the edge of it that it's exposed and it feels like pastry rather than feels smooshy. It feels like cooked pastry. When the edge is starting to cook, that's when you know it's ready. It won't go golden brown yet because we didn't put any milk or egg or anything to glaze it. But if it feels firm, it's ready. So can you see, I've got this out. Now we're going to have to throw this rice away. It is very, very hot and starting to burn, right? So be careful when you do that. We're going to carefully lift up our greaseproof paper to do that. And I'm not going to tempt fate by trying to do that on camera. But can you see just here, it is starting to turn slightly golden brown and feel flaky and pastry. So that means that we know that our base is ready. But this is what our base looks like now. So it's not quite cooked on the bottom still, but the edges are. But it also hasn't risen up. So it's not going to cause us problems when we add our filling. We've got our base here, we've got our top. But we need to stick those letters to the top of the pastry. Like I said, if you're vegan, I think you could use jam for this. I don't know how good of a glaze it would get. I've never tried that before. But I'm going to use a bit of beaten egg. Very, very lucky to be able to get local eggs, which is great. And I'm going to use a pastry brush. So if you don't have a pastry brush, you can just use 2 fingers. It's a bit gross, but it's doable. I only just got a pastry brush recently. And before that, I'm not just throwing that on the floor, there is a bin down there. Before that, I would just stick fingers into it. But so, crack your egg into your cup. You can't see because I've chosen too big of a cup. And give it a good beat. When you've finished, it's sort of a pale colour. And your yolk is mixed in. And then, what we're going to do is very carefully pick up our individual letters that I've just realised you can't see. There we go. I'm going to pick up our individual letters. We're going to put a little bit of the egg on the back of them, getting it everywhere, and then we're going to pop it down. It doesn't matter if you get some egg on your pastry, because that's okay, we're going to cover the whole thing in egg when we're done. But first we're just going to individually stick these letters on. Right, then carefully, because this is still hot, we're also going to paint some egg around here, but I'm going to put my filling in first. I'm smishing these apples down a little bit more. Little taste, make sure it's sweet enough, it is. And then I'm going to put my apple mixture in there. And would you look at that, it seems like 5 apples is the perfect amount of apples for this apple pie. Fantastic. So if you're using a little cake tin for yours, 5 apples, perfect. 5 Granny Smiths, I should say. Right. And carefully pick up my lid, gotta put it on top like that. Usually when you're making a pie that has fruit or meat in it, you want to stab the top to give it some space to steam up without sort of making all your pastry soggy. But because my lid doesn't cover my pie completely, I don't have to do that because the steam can escape around the edges. What I am going to do is just push my filling out to make sure that it is meeting the edges there. And then I might put a couple of little hearts on it as well, actually, because now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking there's a bit too much exposed apple there. So I'm just going to take some of my pastry and just sort of squidge it into heart shapes. Little ones. And again, doesn't matter if they're perfect, because it being imperfect shows that you made it yourself, and that's what matters in this. Doesn't matter that you didn't make your pastry. It doesn't matter if you bought your apples like pre-cut up or whatever. You put effort and you put time in, and they can jolly well be grateful about that, or they can sod off and make their own pie. Quite heart-shaped, isn't it? Heart-shaped enough, I think. And then, once we've got all our raw pastry on how we want it, I'm quite pleased with how that's looking so far, we're going to brush the whole pastry with the beaten egg. We don't want to do too much, because that's where the saying over egg the pudding comes from. But just enough so that as it dries and cooks down, it is going to make it all shiny and nice and appetizing looking. It's going to make it go golden brown much quicker, so you don't burn it. But if you don't put some of this on, it's just going to stay like not very golden brown. So like I said, if you're vegan, I usually, with my apple pie roses, when I'm making them, I use apricot jam to glaze them and make them look cute. We don't want pools of egg sitting on this. We just want a nice little covering so that it's all glistening like that. Now we're going to whack it back in the oven. How long are you putting it in the oven for, V? I don't know, until it's done. Like, keep an eye on it. When it's golden brown, then it's done. Probably 15 minutes-ish, but it depends how thick you did your pastry. I've got a bit of leftover pastry here, but it's not really enough to justify keeping and freezing it. So I'm actually going to make a little treat for my son, who is at home sick still today, and will probably be feeling a bit left out that I made a pie for his dad, but not for him. And so I am just going to take what's left of that pastry. My grandma used to do this for me when I was baking at her house and loved it. Take the pastry, get some strawberry jam from the cupboard. We're going to cover this whole thing in strawberry jam, just a thin little layer. I used to love this when I was little. Although when I was little, I also used to eat it raw, which is kind of weird now that I think about it. Like, Grandma, why did you let me do that? I suppose I've got a good, strong immune system nowadays, so maybe it was okay. I'm going to take the edge of this and I'm just going to roll it and keep rolling. And where I've got a wonky bit there, I'm just going to tuck that in and keep rolling. I can make a little sushi roll out of pastry. And that is what I'm making, kind of. I'm making what is called a jam roly-poly. I'm going to find something to put that on, whack it in the oven. Well, I'm going to cover it in egg as well, actually. Plop him on there, like that. Bit of egg on there too, just to make it shiny and nice. And because I've still got some egg left over as well as some pastry. And there we go, I'm going to whack that in the oven as well. How long for? 10 minutes-ish, maybe? When it's golden brown, it's done. I once again opened the oven, all the heat went in my eye, my eyes are watering. I'm not crying about my lack of Valentines, honestly. While that's cooking, I am going to clean this stuff up, just like this. God, I wish it was that easy in real life. And I suppose I better go and make myself look a bit more presentable as well. Just like that. And thanks, it has pockets, it's my most cheerful dress. Let's get this pie out the oven. Okay, so let's get this out of the oven and see if it has turned out okay. Pretty good, huh? Now my kids don't know that I made up a jam roly-poly, so that's going to be a nice surprise for them, but we're going to get that out as well. And look at that, like a jam sausage roll. I think they're going to have fun with that. I loved it when I was a kid and my grandma made them. Well, I hope that you enjoyed my latest chaos cooking video. I would say I'm never bloody doing that again on this channel, but every time I say that I end up doing it again anyway. But I do hope that I've inspired you to make a lovely, yummy mess of your kitchen. Get chaotic with it, throw all the ingredients in, it don't matter, it'll taste nice in the end. And remember, like I said, if you've spent hours making any kind of food thing for your loved one and they complain about it, I give you full permission to choke them with it. Join me on Monday for my next vlog. I have absolutely no idea what I'm vlogging about now because every single time I make a plan something goes wrong, and so you're just going to have to Join me on Monday, 6 a.m. UK time, and find out what I'm vlogging about. But if you can't wait till that long to see me again, I understand, I am pretty awesome. I will be here every single morning in your shorts, taking a great big deep breath, letting you know what I'm grateful for that day. Sometimes I'm letting you know what's challenging me as well, because we're real on this channel. And I'm also here on a Witchy Wednesday doing an intuitive tarot card read for you as well. Until then, you have yourself a magical week.